Welcome to Euronews Now. I'm Mariam Zaidi. Here are the headlines. World Health Organization says Omicron variant is very transmissible, but urges people not to panic. With cases continuing to rise, more countries impose restrictions. Trying to contain the Omicron spread, countries introduce further curbs on school children as vaccinations for under 12-year-olds gain momentum.
Russia increases its state control over the popular social network VK. Analysts say the move is significant and symbolic.
Yorkshire County Cricket Club's entire coaching staff and its director resign as English cricket tries to move on from the Azim Rafiq racism scandal. The World Health Organization's chief scientist is warning that while the new COVID Omicron variant is very transmissible, people shouldn't panic. The WHO says that so far it has not seen any reports of Omicron-related deaths. They are urging people to be prepared, but emphasised that it's important not to rush to any conclusions. The global health body says the world is much better prepared now than a year ago, given the development of vaccines.
Let's also not forget that the predominant variant right now still remains the Delta variant. So Omicron may be on the rise and we may come to a point where it takes over to be the dominant variant, but at this point, the very dominant variant remains Delta. And we have to protect ourselves against Delta, against COVID-19, and the measures that work against Delta work so far, as we know, mostly also against Omicron.
More than 1% of the German population is currently infected with COVID. The leading institute in charge of monitoring the pandemic estimates that more than 925,000 people are actively infected with the virus. It's seeing a spike of almost 75,000 new cases every day. Health Minister Jens Spahn says the unvaccinated are becoming seriously ill at a much greater rate than those who've been jabbed. In Belgium, the Prime Minister has announced a raft of new restrictions to try and stem the spread of Omicron as hospitals face intense pressure. All indoor events, with a few exceptions, will be banned. Primary schools and kindergartens also face a range of new measures. Shona Murray reports.
In Belgium, with more than 1 in 50 people infected with COVID in the past 2 weeks, hospitals are cancelling operations and ICUs are becoming overwhelmed. The government is announcing new restrictions just a week after tightening measures, but it's not considering mandatory vaccines like neighbouring Germany. Schools will close early on December 18th in order for teachers to get their booster shots. Large groups will no longer be allowed to meet. Outdoor events such as Christmas markets can still take place, but only with the COVID certificate, and bars and restaurants can stay open until 11 o'clock at night.
The number of deaths in our country is lower than in comparable countries, and that is due to the high vaccination coverage. Getting vaccinated is an act of solidarity. 8,000 fewer deaths have been recorded and 30,000 fewer people have been admitted to hospitals in recent months as a result.
Meanwhile, Belgian virologist Mark van Ranst has told Euronews that so far the impact of symptoms of new variant Omicron for vaccinated people in South Africa is mild, but this could change given the Belgian elderly population. He says proper ventilation in the future is key, as is getting vaccinated.
Well, if you're unvaccinated and you're not living in a cave, there is one certainty, and that is you will get the disease. You might escape it for a couple of months, but you'll get it. When this Omicron variant really takes hold here in Europe, then it will become almost inevitable that you're going to get it. Now, when you're vaccinated, the symptoms seem really mild, and I hope it stays that way. The problem is we don't know yet for sure. That might really help. But if you're unvaccinated, I have only one message, and that is get vaccinated.
It'll be 2 weeks before the world knows the true impact of Omicron, but vaccine producers and manufacturers of antiviral drugs say these can be ready within months. Shona Murray, Euronews, Brussels.
More countries across Europe are now looking to roll out vaccines for children. Austria started inoculating 5 to 11-year-olds last month. I spoke to Kike Basat, a paediatrician and research professor at the Barcelona Institute for Global Health, who says vaccinating children is critical to reducing the spread of the virus.
We are seeing that the new infections and the new wave are led by infections in children, particularly in children under the age of 12, which are the ones which have not started to be vaccinated. So vaccinating in those specific age group could have an important toll and contribute to the contention of the transmission globally, not only at the individual level.
Now, we were just hearing from our reporter there about the new rules coming into place, re-COVID in Belgium. Now, Belgium has introduced masks for children above 6 years old. It seems very strong, given what we've been told about COVID, less likely to affect children. But might this possibly help with cluster transmission?
Sure it will. We have the experience here in Spain that children are obliged to wear masks in schools since September 2020, and this led to a very low transmission rate within schools, even before vaccines were introduced in the country. Everything that can be done to limit transmission from and to children is going to help, obviously, in containing transmission at the more general population level.
Sure. I mean, so just to pick up on what you said there about everything should be done to limit the transmission. So all of these new restrictions, will they also help ensure the rights of children to having a full and proper education? And perhaps could these new measures then stop countries sort of whole-scale closing schools down like we're seeing in the run-up to Christmas?
Yes, and we have to reflect on the toll of closing down schools in the mental health and well-being of children. Face-to-face school is a fundamental right of children. They've been subject to many difficulties because not being able to go to face-to-face school during the entire pandemic. We should have learned a lot about this in the past 20 months. We need to provide the right for them to go back face-to-face to school. And there are measures, and the example of Spain is paradigmatic in terms of how well transmission was dealt with in schools while maintaining fully presential classes during the entire 2021 academic year.
To Russia now, where the state-owned energy company Gazprom has gained control of the country's most popular social network, VK. Critics say the move represents Russia's increased efforts to control online conversations. Matthew in the Cube has more.
Well, if you live in Russia, Belarus or another Eastern European country, the chances are you'll have heard of VKontakte or VK. The popular social network, which looks a lot like Facebook, claims to reach 90% of the online Russian-speaking audience. Although it has previously been accused of bowing to the Russian government, it was officially independent, its shares being owned by a holding company of the Russian billionaire Alisher Usmanov. But on Thursday, those shares were sold to Gazprom, the Russian state energy giant, and more specifically, sold to Sogaz, an insurance company that is particularly close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, Gazprom has said that VK will still remain an independent company, but this comes at the same time as we're seeing increasing efforts by Moscow to control the Russian internet. They say this is an attempt to combat online extremism, but critics say these continued moves are an effort to limit public debate and inhibit free speech. Earlier, I spoke to Euronews Russia analyst Galina Polanskaya, and she told me that this move to transfer those shares to Gazprom was a significant and symbolic one.
We know that VKontakte is not what it used to be in 2014. Its creator, Pavel Durov, had to sell its share, and he explained in interviews that he had a conflict with the Russian Federal Security Bureau over the privacy and protection of data of the users. He had to leave the country. So now what does this deal mean right now? Well, some critics say that it is very, very symbolic and means that the Russian state is finally taking a total control over a key part of Russia's social media online space.
Galina, we've previously seen content related to Russian opponents on social media networks being limited by the Russian authorities. How significant is this latest move when it comes to free speech in the country?
Well, you see, Matthew, critics now say that very soon we will see real censorship in the internet in Russia, which is still quite a free space. So we can read independent media, we can watch independent channels, which are many of which have been recently labeled foreign agents in Russia. But we have also seen very alarming signs. We have seen huge fines against Twitter, against Google or Apple. And during the parliamentary elections, indeed, Apple and Google agreed to remove the application, the smart voting application of the jailed critic Alexei Navalny from the Russia's web space. Many critics are saying that the Iron Curtain in the internet in Russia is ready to drop down any minute, and that Russians will have only the domestic content. And by the way, Gazprom Media has just launched a Russian version of the Chinese TikTok.
And Marianne, following that Gazprom announcement, the CEO of VK has said he will also step down amid this shareholder shake-up.
Russia's ruling People's Party has picked its new leader, and he's likely to become the next chancellor. Clemens Waller reports.
All change in Austria as Interior Minister Karl Nehammer looks set to become the country's new chancellor. He says the decision was made unanimously by the Austrian People's Party executive. Nehammer will succeed Alexander Schallenberg, who stepped down on Thursday after just 2 months in office.
It is important for me as the new head of the party to stick to our positions. We need to say clearly what is necessary in the topic of migration, asylum, and the question about security for the people in our country. Three basic guidelines in the People's Party are important for me. These basic guidelines are even more important now. These are responsibility, solidarity and freedom.
The leadership change was sparked by the decision of former Chancellor Sebastian Kurz to retire from political life altogether. Kurz and his close associates are accused of trying to secure his rise to the leadership of his party and the country with the help of manipulated polls and friendly media reports financed with public money. He denies all charges.
We're going to go to a break, but still to come, is men's tennis doing enough to support the WTO on Peng Shuai? More on the Chinese tennis star after the break. Welcome back to the programme. Friday was another historic day in cricket as Yorkshire County Cricket Club has sacked the entire coaching staff. The move follows the racism scandal with their former player Azim Rafiq, who was deemed a victim of racial harassment and bullying after he spoke about his experience at the club. Well, sports presenter Will Dalton joins me now. So, Will, we've had a real big cull at Yorkshire County Cricket Club. The entire coaching staff is out, and its director. Tell us more.
Yes, Mariam, they're all gone. They are part of 16 staff who have left the club. As you said, that includes the director of cricket, Martin Moxon, who's been at the club since 2007, and also the head coach, Andrew Gale. Now, the new chairman of Yorkshire Cricket Club, Lord Patel, who only took the position only a few weeks ago, said that significant change was required and that the club are committed to taking whatever action and steps are necessary to regain the trust that they have lost. He said that without making important changes to how the club is run, they cannot move on from the past and to become a culture which is inclusive and progressive. Of course, now looking ahead to what steps have been taken, hopefully to change the ways of English cricket and Yorkshire itself. Starting there, that it was confirmed yesterday that Yorkshire would undergo an independent review into how the club is run. And of course, the English Cricket Board, the ECB, have announced a 5-point plan which they hope to implement to tackle racism and discrimination, which they say as well will look into a full review of what they call, I suppose, a dressing room culture.
Well, let's hope that, cricket culture can, of course, change. But over to Formula One now. Ahead of the Saudi Grand Prix, you've got 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton saying he doesn't feel comfortable racing there because of the lack of LGBTQ plus rights. How's that gone down?
Well, I think you can guess it hasn't gone down pretty well. But in fairness to Lewis Hamilton, he's not just obviously the biggest Formula One driver. He's one of the biggest sports people in the world. So if anybody can, raise some awareness, he definitely can. And that's why he said, the decision was out of his hands, but he wants to raise awareness of the issues that are involved and that he's hoping to promote. He did this. He took a stand in Qatar when it was announced the Formula One would be going to Qatar by having the rainbow flag, or a slightly changed rainbow flag, on his helmet. He intends, I believe, to do that again in Saudi Arabia. Of course, this all concerns the whole sports washing phenomenon, where essentially a country will try to host these big sporting events to enhance their international reputation. Now, plenty of human rights organizations, one of them, Grant Liberty, put out a report earlier in the year saying they had estimated that Saudi Arabia had spent over $1.5 billion on the likes of snooker, horse racing and golf events to promote the country. Now, when Formula One were pushed on this, when they had agreed the deal to go to Saudi Arabia for the first time, they said they hoped that they could be a catalyst for change. So we'll wait and see how that kind of takes place and hopefully does over this race and the coming years if they return.
Sure, and then Will, just really, really quickly, 2 races to go. Who's going to win? Is it going to be Hamilton?
It has to be, doesn't it? Lewis Hamilton. When the chips are down and his back is to the wall, that's when he performs the best. He's won the last 2 races, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him winning the next 2, the final 2, and taking another crown.
Well, let's wait and see then, Will Dalton. Thank you so much. The men's tennis governing body, the ATP, has been criticised for not joining the Women's Tennis Association in suspending all tournaments in China over concerns about player Peng Shuai. The Association of Tennis Professionals said Peng's situation raises serious concerns but fell short of cancelling any events in China. The International Olympic Committee says it shares the concerns about her well-being. The IOC says it will be allowed to meet Peng in person next month. Peng largely disappeared from public life after making sexual assault allegations against one of the country's most powerful politicians. Yacho Wang, senior China researcher at the Human Rights Watch, says that Peng Shuai is not the only personality in China to have been coerced to say that they are well. We asked her if quiet diplomacy is part of the IOC was the right approach for this situation.
I don't think that's the right way to tackle this, especially not the way that IOC tried to tackle this, which is to participate in the Chinese government's propaganda to construct a narrative that Peng Shuai is free. The Chinese government in the past have disappeared many people and then make them reappear to say, I'm doing well, don't worry about me. This fits into the government's past of doing that, and the IOC to participate in that is shameful.
Now, the WTA, they've suspended all competitions in China, but the men's side, their tennis association, they haven't done that. So what impact will the WTA's decision really have then?
Well, I think the WTA has done is inspiring. It says, human rights is bigger than business. We are going to prioritize the athlete's safety over our profits. It's inspiring. It's disappointing to see ATP not following suit. But I think that in the long run, WTA's stance will, galvanize other organizations to do the same.
Now, we've seen appearances, of course, by Peng Shuai over the past few weeks. She's just made another one saying she's safe and well. How much credibility can these appearances, or do they have, really?
I don't think they have any credibility. I mean, as I said, this happened to many people in China before, whether you're the human rights lawyer who criticized the government or you're the celebrity, a business person who somehow did something the government doesn't like. They got disappeared and they say on TV, well, I'm doing well. But some of them later left China. They recanted their story and they said, I was forced to say that I was doing well. So, this could happen to Peng Shuai.
And so how, just lastly then, how important is it that the international focus keeps on the plight of Peng?
I think it's very important. Doing this job for these years, I realized that the attention, the pressure keeps people in China safer than they would have been had there not been international attention. The government understands that if the world is watching, they needed to be more cautious in what they do.
Stay with us. Lots more to come on Euronews now. Welcome back to the programme. Just as we were all starting to go back to live concerts and events and feel normal again, along comes Omicron to put a stop to all of it. Our culture correspondent Andrea Bolai, though, told me tighter measures and postponements of some events are already happening.
In England, some of the biggest theatres are now saying mask wearing is mandatory for all performances. The Royal Opera House, the venues in the West End where Andrew Lloyd Webber's musicals are playing, for example. Here in Lyon, there's a massive festival next week, the Fête de Lumière. This is still going to go ahead, organisers have said, but now you have to wear a mask, even though it's outdoors. But given that it attracts around 2 million visitors, I guess that's not perhaps that surprising. Further south in Montpellier, a music festival, I Love Techno, has been postponed until April. And even in Germany, the Berlinale, the big Berlin International Film Festival, is exploring contingency plans, possibly including a delay.
Well, let's go to Angela Merkel, obviously. Her choice of farewell song has raised a few eyebrows, hasn't it?
At her kind of farewell official public goodbye, she had 3 songs played by a military band, and one of them was You Forgot the Colour Film by the German punk singer Nina Hagen.
Should we take a quick listen to it then?
Oh, let's.
Let's do that.
Yeah, it's about, I mean, you couldn't hear it from them, but it's about a boyfriend who only packs a black and white film when he goes on holiday to take pictures of the old communist Germany. And it's a tribute, of course, to Angela Merkel's East German upbringing. She says, this song was a highlight of my youth.
Well, who'd have thought she was a bit of a punk rocker? Let's now turn to the Turner Prize Honours Visual Art, of course. This year, all the nominees were collectives, were they?
Yes, that's right. The Turner Prize said all nominees would be collectives who'd helped inspire social change through art. And as, of course, galleries have had such a turbulent time over the last year, the Turner Prize said that for once, nominees didn't have to have had a major show in the run-up. So it was the Array Collective. They're a Belfast activist group who recreated an Irish pub and won the prize. Now, this pub was decorated with banners about reproductive rights and LGBTQ issues, and a list of pub rules, including you must have a laugh.
And that's all for Euronews now. Take care and bye-bye.